You're listening to Black Parents Aging, where we help you navigate caring for aging loved ones. Every Wednesday, we'll discuss how to help your parents successfully navigate this new season of life. We are going to talk about legal, health, technology, and finances. Here's your host attorneys, Olivia Smith and Nicola Robinson.
All right, welcome back to another episode of Black Parents Aging, guys. I have a serious episode for y'all. It is a little somber. I know y'all don't want to talk about this, but it's such a necessary topic. And I have a really good friend of mine with us today. I'm going to let her introduce herself. She's going to tell you where she works and what she does. And then we're going to jump right into the show. So without further ado, guest, you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, I am Zenia Allie Murray McCray. I'm a funeral director here in Atlanta, Georgia for Murray Brothers Funeral Home. So, of course, I definitely deal with families and aging, and I have heard some of the heartache when people are not prepared for it. And, of course,
get into all kinds of stuff. Tell people, I know the backstory, but everybody else may not. So tell people how you end up becoming a funeral director.
Okay, so Murray Brothers Funeral Home was established in 1981. I grew up around the funeral home. I don't know anything else. Of course, if you know Mr. Murray is very frugal. That was our summer school. That was our after school. So whatever it is at the funeral home that could be done, I have done it, swept floors, painted, everything. After college, they asked if I would go to mortuary school. And I was like, sure, why not? Got all my licensure, passed all the national exams. 23 years later, here I am.
Wow. So you have been in this business a long, long time.
October will be 23 years.
Wow. So yes, we're going to use all that you know and all your experience to try to help our listeners, because I know a lot of people are not thinking about that. I mean, that's the last thing anybody ever wants to think about, obviously, is their demise or their passing or the passing of a loved one. So any advice that you could give somebody who's just listening to this now and it's like, okay, you know what? I need to start prepping. What is the prep side? What should I be doing early?
So prep side is, even me at 40 years old, I have a closet here in the house. Everybody's life insurance is in that book. I have everything written out for myself on how I would want things to be planned out. It is very important to have wheels in place when you have assets. And even if you don't have a lot, it's important to have those notes written down so that your family will most importantly know your wishes.
See, guys, I tell y'all that all the time, but see, now you're hearing it from somebody else. So sometimes, you got to hear it several times before you be like, okay, maybe there is some validity. So I did not pay Zena to say that, just to let you know. Okay, Zena, what else?
And that's from the aspect of dealing with family. You can be smart and do things such as pre-planning, meaning that you go into a funeral home, select everything that you want. The great thing about pre-planning is locking in today's cost versus the increase that you have 10, 15, 20 years down the line.
Let's talk about costs. Girl, you brought it up. Let's talk about it, because I know I was sticker shocked. Let me tell you, my aunt passed and my family all staring at each other and was like, yeah, nobody's paying that. But in the contrast, when my godmother passed, she had pre-planned. She had done everything. She had picked out her casket. She picked out her dress. Everything was so smooth. We all just kind of showed up and was like, wow, like the production was done. It was nothing to think about. But when there was no pre-plan and everybody got hit with the sticker shock, it was like, she don't need all that.
Exactly.
So talk to us about the cost. Like, let's just be real with the people.
So costs will go up every year, if not every 2 years. Okay. It's been some times where, the recession has hit, and we understand serving our community and trying to make sure that we're there for them. And we may not have a price increase for 3 or 4 years, but when it comes, it's going to shock everybody. And you have to understand you have your cost of living that increases. Things go up in our lifestyle every day. Groceries go up constantly. So you have to understand that our costs will also have to increase because, say, for instance, with COVID, we have to have more protection gear. for our staffing. We have to go through sanitizing. So a lot of things are being done to protect the public as well as ourselves, but we haven't even had a price increase to reflect COVID. We're still just going off of those 2020 prices that were initially set in January before the pandemic hit. So the cemetery is another aspect. So it's just not the funeral home. You have to look at the cemetery and the funeral home as a whole, because they too will have price increases. They too allow you to do pre-planning, and you just have to sit down and make those decisions on what's going to be best for you and your family.
So when you talk about prices, let's talk about like on the funeral home side. I mean, so many little things. So what should people be thinking about? I mean, I know there's the program and the flowers, but what are the other things that people probably should start like saying, okay, what's a budget or what's realistic for numbers?
So you're going to have what you call non-declinable fees when it comes down to a funeral. Your non-declinable fees are things such as your professional fees of the funeral director and staff. And basically, this is a fee that covers the funeral home in its entirety, our overhead that has to be taken care of. And you have things such as embalming. Embalming is not required by every remain, doesn't have to be embalmed. There are ways around it. If you want to be buried within a certain amount of time, you don't have to be embalmed. You have your limousine costs, you have hearse costs, you have viewing costs, you have service costs of if you want that service in a chapel or at a church or graveside service, because they do need staffing and equipment to assist you. And of course, when you get into programs, flowers, DVD pictorials, all those items are deemed to be extras. They're not needed, but people want them. And one thing people have a hard time differentiating between is a want versus a need when it comes down to funeral service. I've talked to several families already today, even though I was off helping a colleague to bury their loved one. And I'm trying to explain to them, well, it's nothing wrong with the service that I'm proposing to you, but it's what you want versus what you can afford and need at the moment. So you just have to sit there and go in, focus, knowing what you want. If there's a budget in your mind, I always tell my families, please sit down and let your funeral director know your budget so that we can try to work within that budget versus going over that budget. And it's okay to have a budget when you go into a funeral home.
What's a realistic budget for, we're not talking dove release or anything, elaborate, but just for a conservative funeral, what's a realistic expense? What should people
just for a realistic funeral with burial? We're right at about $5,500.
Okay.
People don't understand why you got taxes. It's a tangible items. I do have to charge you for that. I do have to pay taxes just like you all pay taxes. $5,500 will be your base. And then, of course, you can go up from there. Now, there are other firms within the city where you could get under $5,500, but I remind families to definitely be mindful of your quality versus the amount of money that you are spending.
And so that's just the fees for funerals. So let's talk about what the fees are for the gravesite and like a plot and all that other stuff.
So on the average in the city, you're going to be at $3,000 and up. We can easily get to $20,000 at a cemetery.
Wow.
Yeah. So it just depends. But I try to explain to people, look at your cemetery property as real estate. Go through in the evening, see how that is around, the afternoon or the weekend, just so you're comfortable with that area where you're placing your loved one.
I would have never thought of that. Never thought to go check it out like I'm buying a house.
Because the worst thing in the world is having a graveside and you got people in the apartments across the street playing Set It Off while you're having a graveside.
That is an excellent point. And that sounds like that has happened before. Wow. Okay, so let's talk about, so a lot of people are like, well, I have insurance. So isn't insurance just going to pick it up? So how does that work in terms of if your family has life insurance? Like a lot of us have never actually dealt with death, life insurance, pay funeral home. So what is that process like?
Of course, you have life insurance. Of course, it can be used to pay for the funeral expenses. You have certain stipulations when it comes down to life insurance. One of the stipulations being that it has to be out of its contestability period, meaning that that policy has to be 2 years or older in order for it to pay the face value. There are some stipulations in regards to some insurance companies that only ask that it be in place for a year. some 18 months. It just depends. But when you are sitting down with an insurance agent, be sure to get all of that information explained to you so that you'll know how to proceed. The insurance policy, of course, when I sit down with families, they may have it and they may be trying to push it on me as soon as we sit down at a table. I try to allow a family to pick what they want first because they, again, should know their budget. And then I'll take that policy at the end so I can do my verification. And we do our verification. We sign off on some documents with the beneficiary. And usually the funeral home is paid within 30 to 45 days of giving the death certificate and all of the paperwork completed by the beneficiary. I advise people not to leave small children as beneficiaries because when you leave a small child as a beneficiary, they are a minor. Therefore, you cannot be buried. That money will be placed in a trust for that child, and you have nothing to be buried with.
Y'all, I didn't pay her to say none of this. I can't stress it enough.
It's important. At least have someone you trust. If it's not a family member that you trust, at least a dear friend who will carry out your wishes.
So what about, okay, that's life insurance, but so many of, especially our people, don't have life insurance.
No.
These GoFundMes and these fish fries, how does that work on your end?
You just got off the phone with the families I was talking to. I'm not a fan of either.
Okay.
I'm not a fan of GoFundMes because I have seen where a family has insurance, but they still have a GoFundMe. I've seen issues with where someone has a GoFundMe and they don't use that money towards funeral expenses. That bothers me deeply. And I do understand there's been some tragic situations where people are just wanting to give, I guess, to show love towards people. I'm just not a fan of the GoFundMe at all for that particular reason. We shouldn't look at it as a source of funeral expenses. I sell insurance as well, Nicole. I don't know if I told you that. But if you can buy a beer, a lottery ticket, cigarettes, you can afford life insurance.
That's deep.
Yeah.
We're having a guest on who sells life insurance as well. And I might have to bring you back too to talk about life insurance because I think so many people think it's out of reach. They think, okay, well, or they just put it off. Like one, it costs too much. And two, I got all the time in the world. I think that being probably the bigger reason. But part of it is a lack of understanding. Not really understanding the value of life insurance and how it all works. So we're going to make sure we educate people so that they can then help their parents to know, okay, what kind of policies they need and what they need to have in place. Let's transition and talk about pre-planning because I am a big advocate of that. I use pre-planning a lot in my practice. I try to send everybody I can, like, go take care of this. So tell people what that entails.
So pre-planning is just where you sit down with a funeral director to discuss what you would want as far as your final wishes, be it cremation, be it burial, be it if you die here in Atlanta, but you want to be sent back home to Chicago, getting all of those necessary things prepared and in place. So what the pre-need does is it allows you to lock in 2021's costs. If you have life insurance, we do ask for a deposit to hold that pre-need. That deposit is $150. That money is placed into an escrow account. That money cannot be touched until we present a death certificate. You are monitored by the state of Georgia, Secretary of State, in regards to your pre-needs. So, of course, it's secured. And at the time of passing is just where your family would notify the funeral home, this person has passed. We pull the pre-need. We see all of their wishes there. We go over them verbally on the phone with the family. And it's basically all you have to do is tell me when, where, and when are you bringing the clothes so that we can prepare that particular person and move forward from there. Of course, you have some pre-needs where people want to pay this expense in full. A lot of people don't believe in insurance. So it's let me go ahead and give you this money now. I'm locked in. I'm taken care of. Everything is okay. We don't have to worry about it. They may come to me 10 years later and be like, Zena, we got to sit down and review this. This happens all the time. So we'll sit down and review. They may want to make some changes. We make those changes and we keep going.
See, and I think that too many of us think of this as such a painful thing, and it's so, sad and grieving. And I try to tell people, like, you pay your taxes. That ain't sad, that ain't grieving. Like, we just got to take care of business. And this is just
Definitely.
taking care of business. What I know for sure is we all will leave here someday.
We will.
And so taking care of the business side of it and making sure that you have less left for your family to kind of like scramble and sort out, it just makes sense to me. Like, why wouldn't you go ahead and put some things in place so they're not left trying to just guess at it and hoping that they have the funds and hoping that they have the resources to go ahead and bury you when that time comes?
Hmm.
Well, Zena,
It's bad when people, they say, well, we only got $400 in the GoFundMe. You got a payment plan? No, we don't.
So what about that? Okay, somebody's interested in go ahead and pre-planning and getting some of this stuff done. Can they then do some type of payments towards it if they pre-plan?
Yes.
See?
So you have people who are not eligible for insurance due to pre-existing illnesses. So
Right.
they will go ahead, do a pre-need, send that monthly payment in. And, I've had a lady pay like $35 a month for 3 years, but she finally paid everything off. She would bring in something extra when she got her taxes. And it's taken care of for when that time should come.
That's amazing. Because now
Yeah.
her family just gets to grieve and remember her and move on, as
Hmm.
opposed to scrambling and trying to figure out what they're going to do next. So if you are listening to this episode and you have not had this conversation with your parents, this might be a great time to sit down with them and see if we can get started on some pre-need. And it doesn't have to be a big expensive burden if you
Hmm.
start early enough, and you can do a small payment plan until it's already paid for.
Correct.
That is amazing. What else you want to tell the people?
I don't know.
In your 23 years, tell us about some of the things that you have seen in this position that you like, wow.
Have your affairs in order, especially if you're in a situation where you have a lot of children,
Hmm.
especially if you have a lot of children by a lot of different people. Have your affairs in order. Make sure that the children know the person who should be the spokesperson for the family. Make sure your beneficiaries know who they are, so that you don't have to play a guessing game. You have some insurance companies right now, they won't share anything with you. So it makes it hard for a family if we can't do any verification of the insurance, because then they're having to pay out of pocket. And of course, that can definitely still be a burden on a family. I definitely encourage people to just sit down and talk about it. My oldest, my sister, they know where everything is, because I know my husband would be a wreck if something was to happen. I know how emotional he is. So you have to have your backup plan. So those two persons are my backup plan. I've heard of families having insurance parties, and I thought this was the greatest idea when I was invited. This particular insurance party I was invited to, we sat down with a family. It was about 30, 40 people. This was before the pandemic, and they had food and music and everything. Everybody shared what they wanted, who their beneficiary was. And I was like, you know what? This is a brilliant idea. More families need to do this. But you have to be open about talking about death. It's something we'll all experience, whether you want to or not. One of my jokes all the time is nobody makes it out alive. So, yeah.
And
So,
if you guys ever get a chance to meet Miss Zena, you will know, like, she has a true sense of humor. It is not grave. It is not somber. It is a good time at the Murray Brothers.
you have to, in doing this every day, you have to laugh. If you don't, you will hurt yourself in doing what I do every day. So we have to sit back and laugh and definitely have a sense of humor.
Well, I so appreciate you coming on the show.
Oh, it's no problem at all.
I would love any parting words for the people.
Oh, I wish everybody health and wealth in 2021. Take care of yourself. Please mask up. Be safe.
Yes, that is so real. If you are having these conversations with your family and you want to learn more about pre-planning, you can definitely reach out to Ms. Zena at Murray Brothers. Give them ways that they can reach you.
They can reach me. The number there is 404-349-3000. I'm at extension 18. You can always email me, Z Murray McCray, and that's ZMurrayMccray at mbfh.com. And you definitely can reach out to me if you have any questions or you want to ask or say anything. Please feel free to call me.
And I can talk from personal experience. We are a Murray Brothers family. The Murray Brothers did my grandma's funeral and some other family members. And then when it was time for my aunt to be buried, there was a huge fight over who was going to bury her, because we Murray Brothers family here. So I know from personal experience they do a fantastic job. So
thank
you. If you are listening and you are in the Atlanta area and you want to go ahead and pre-plan, definitely reach out to them. They will make sure everything is in order. That's it for today's episode, guys. If you have not already, please go ahead and subscribe, leave us a review, and check us out on our Facebook group, Black Parents Aging. All right, until next time, take care.
You're listening to Black Parents Aging, where we help you navigate caring for aging loved ones. Every Wednesday, we'll discuss how to help your parents successfully navigate this new season of life. We are going to talk about legal, health, technology, and finances. Here's your host attorneys, Olivia Smith and Nicola Robinson.